You are going to love today. As a matter of fact, you're going to get a lot out of today. This is a very special day. We have a very special guest. Marc Dalessio is joining us from Portugal. Hi, Marc.
Hey, Eric. How's it going?
It's great to see you. I had forgotten that you moved to Portugal. I was thinking you were living in Croatia and that you moved a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we've been sort of bouncing around the last 10 years. So
What prompted the move?
Well, my wife was finished studying and she switched to she became a painter. So I had always wanted to live somewhere with kind of rolling hills and big open views for landscape painting. And so we actually looked at satellite maps, and this was sort of the perfect area. So
Really, you actually looked on the maps for hills.
Yeah,
great idea.
Where we wanted in the world. So we drove obviously all around, and this was perfect. So.
Outstanding. So what are you going to talk about today?
I was going to talk about, I've just been in France for the last 2 months, and I've been painting large landscapes all summer, both outside and then in the quarantine inside. And I was doing half quarantine, half indoor, half outdoor paintings. So I thought I'd discuss, I have a bunch of examples here, and I thought I'd talk about the various ways you can go about painting a large landscape, from working entirely outside to working entirely inside, and a mix of the two, and then things to think about when you're doing one or the other. Or the third.
All right, outstanding. So I'll be right back. I'm just going to make a couple quick announcements, and then we'll be rejoining you in a second. All right, thank you. Well, this is a red letter day. Marc Dalessio is one of the finest landscape painters in the world, and one of the finest plein air landscape painters in the world. And there is a big distinction, right? Because, doing landscapes well doesn't always mean doing plein air well. And he, of course, starts out in plein air, and he'll talk about that. So my name is Eric Rhoads, and I am the publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. And welcome today. This is day number 170. That means since coronavirus quarantine began, we started about a week after. It took us about a week to get our act together. But we have been here for you 170 days in a row, no breaks, no days off. And the goal of this 12 noon broadcast every day on Facebook and YouTube and other social media is to get you focused on either learning art, growing in your art, getting better, finding ways to keep your head in the game, keeping you positive, keeping you upbeat, not trying to let this coronavirus thing destroy your life, right? It's something we all have to be aware of, but we don't have to let it destroy us. And so staying positive is a very good thing. And so every day it's been something, art marketing or some guests, some demos. We've got a lot of different things planned for you coming up, because there are a lot of you who are still around the world and around the United States who are still having to stay at home. And so we're trying to be there for you. We thought this would last, a couple of weeks. I think we all thought we were going to be down for a couple of weeks. And so we're going to stick with you and be there for you. And every day at 3 o'clock, we have been giving you art instruction samples. Many of you know this because many of you watch every day or tune in on a regular basis, but many of you don't. And so every day at 3 p.m., we have art instruction samples for you so that you get a chance to see some of the hundreds of art instruction videos that we have produced over the years. And so that's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about some of these videos, to learn from them. Today we have Johnny Lillidahl. Now, Johnny is going to do one today called Color Solutions. Now, Johnny is an excellent teacher. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago, and her husband, Ralph, came to us and said, we would like you to carry on our tradition. We had similar values. We liked each other, and as a result, we took over Lillidahl. I don't know how long ago now, maybe 6 years ago, 8 years ago, or something. But anyway, Johnny is an excellent teacher. She did a lot of teaching, and even though this is more of what I would call vintage, because since we've taken over, of course, we've upgraded the production values is what we call them, where we are using 4K cameras and we're using Hollywood level videographers and filmmakers, and we have a sound stage so that we've got good sound. And so some of the things that were produced before were state of the art at the time they were produced, but they're not state of the art anymore. So you may have to live through some of that. But quite frankly, you look at the old films, right? There was a film, only one small short film of Monet, and it showed Monet with a cigarette in his mouth and he was painting. And that's the only time anybody's got any footage of him painting, but we don't mind what the quality looks like. We want to see that action. And so when I started this, my goal was to preserve the great artists of our generation, the great artists of our time. I look back and I say, you know, we're all trying to figure out, how did John Singer Sargent paint? Was he slow and deliberate? Was he, you know, reckless and, you know, filled with energy? And there are some documentation, but wouldn't it have been nice if we had a video of him and him actually explaining things, or us just being able to watch him paint? So one of my goals in life is to help you understand the artist, get into their heads. That's why we do interviews with them. And to also just give you an opportunity to learn and grow from what they've learned. You know, an artist like our guest today, for instance, Marc Dalessio, you know, Marc has spent his entire life as a painter, and he has spent his entire life learning and growing and constantly developing and getting to the next level. And so the reason we like to preserve these people is so that it continues on when they're gone, you know, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this on and have these videos being seen, you know, for generations to come. And so that's why we do what we do. So a couple of things for you. On Sunday, coming up, I have a Sunday blog called Sunday Coffee. And it was originally written for my kids. You know, it was trying to impart wisdom, if there is any, on my kids. And I write it every week, and it's called Sunday Coffee. You get it for free at coffeewitheric.com. I should mention we also have a $30,000 art competition called the Plein Air Salon. And even though it's plein air because it's after Plein Air magazine, as you know, if you're a subscriber to Plein Air, you know that we cover plein air painting and instruction in plein air. But plein air encompasses a lot of things. It's also the starting point for studio paintings and other things. So we have many categories, including studio paintings and paintings about various subjects. And so you can enter that. Your paintings don't have to be new or fresh. We think good paintings deserve recognition no matter how recent or not recent they might be. And the grand prize winner will win $30,000 and a cover of Plein Air magazine, which can be life-changing for some people. And so here is Tom Hughes, who was our last winner. We gave away last year, 2019, at the Plein Air convention in April in San Francisco. Well, we haven't been able to have a Plein Air convention since then because, well, you know what's going on, right? So we were originally having it May in Denver, and then it got postponed. And we pushed it to Santa Fe. And then we were going to do it this August in Santa Fe, this past August in Santa Fe, and we couldn't do it. Well, now we have all this prize money that we need to give away, and we don't want to wait until the next Plein Air convention. So you'll be getting an email soon, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, on the awards ceremony that we're going to do online, and we're going to get all the finalists together, and you get to be able to watch the whole thing and see us award the prizes. And so that's going to be coming up, and I can't tell you the date, but it's coming up in a couple of weeks. And so we'll be giving away the prize money soon. Anyway, for you, those of you who want to get into this year's Plein Air Salon competition, enter before the end of the month. All right. So what else do I have for you? Well, I want to tell you about Fall Color Week. I was just noticing, I went into town this morning into Lake Placid, New York, and the trees are starting to turn. Now, they're not as colorful as they are in this photograph, but they are starting to turn, and there's some really brilliant reds and some brilliant yellows. And so I'm staying up here because I want to paint some fall color, because I live in a place where we don't have fall color. Well, one of the reasons I created this retreat called Fall Color Week, it's not a workshop. It's artists getting together. It's one price. You pay the price. It includes your room, your meals, the event itself, everything that comes with it. You know, we sit up at night, we do portrait painting, we play music, And we're going to have to do it differently this year, a little bit socially distanced, but we're going to be outdoors painting every day, 2-3 times a day in all the beautiful locations of the White Mountains where the Hudson River School painters painted. And we unusually would be sold, we were sold out or close to sold out. And then, of course, COVID hit. And so we lost a few people, and we didn't think this was going to be able to take place. But at the last minute, right before we pulled the plug on it, we found out we're going to be able to do it. Things are getting better. The hotel's going to be letting us do that. And so we're doing our first and only in-person event, live in-person event this year, Fall Color Week, October 12th through 19 in the White Mountains. And so we do have a few seats left. We'd love for you to join us, and it's incredible color. If you're in a place where you don't get to do color, or maybe you are in a place where you have color, but you would like to just have a week of painting and being around some other folks who love to paint, that's a pretty cool thing. And so check that out. Also, a year from now, as we speak, a year from now, I don't know how I'll do the daily broadcast. And of course, if we're still in quarantine, I probably won't be going on this trip. A year from now, I'm taking 50 artists to Russia. We're going to paint all around Russia. We're going to start in St. Petersburg, and you're going to get a chance to see the beautiful sites. We're going to do touring. We have a private VIP access to the Hermitage, one of the great museums of the world. We will be in there by ourselves. Yes, that's right, by ourselves. I happen to have some friends there. I happen to know the director. We became friends at an event years ago, so we're giving you access to something that just doesn't happen. And we're also going to the Great Russia Museum. You'll probably meet a friend of mine who's the former director there. That's where all the great Russian paintings are. And if you don't know about Russian paintings, I didn't, so don't feel badly, but I became a complete Russophile, I suppose would be the word, because I love the paintings of Russia. And the Russian Museum has the great paintings, and the Tretyakov Museum. They're all part of the same system. And I'm trying, I don't know if this is going to happen yet, but I'm also trying to get us access to the Tretyakov Museum for copying some of the Russian paintings in the museum itself. That has to happen on certain days, and we don't know yet the timing if that's going to happen. But so no promises there. And then we're working on a potential extension to the trip for those of you who want to go to see the Fashion Museum, which is in a different part of Russia, and maybe do a workshop with Joe Wang. So we're working on that. Don't know if it's going to happen yet. But go and we don't have any pricing or anything there, but if you get on the list, we will kind of do it first come, first serve for the people who contact us by getting on the list. And then, so you go to paintrussia.com. All right. So one of the things that is happening that is pretty monumental is we could not do our normal FACE conference, the Figurative Art Convention and Expo. And quite frankly, we had decided to broaden it. We wanted it to become a conference that's not just about figurative and portrait, but also about still life and about landscape and flowers and other things that you paint. So we've put together an incredible group of people who are going to be teaching at Realism Live, including our guest, Marc Dalessio, who's on today. And this is taking place the 21st through the 24th of October. It is going to be a worldwide event. We have instructors from all over the world. We have people attending from all over the world. I think I said yesterday, there's already 15 people just signed up from Australia alone. But we have over 30 countries, 40 countries registered. And we also have a beginner's day. So if you want to kind of get the basics before you go into the conference, you can get, the basics of drawing and painting in these various forms. So Realism Live has an incredible lineup of faculty members, and I would encourage you to go to realismlive.com and check it out. And keep in mind that if you register before the end of the month, you're going to save $200. And so why not do it now and get it done? And we have a 100% money back guarantee. We also have coming up in May, God willing, and the creek don't rise and the corona doesn't continue, we have the Plein Air Convention in May 23rd through 27th in Denver, Colorado, and you want to get signed up for that. Okay, so I think I've done all my official announcements here. No, I haven't. I want to tell you that we're giving away an easel brush clip. An easel brush clip is a clip that clips onto your easel and gives you a chance to hold your brushes and maybe I can find a graphic of that. So that's kind of what it looks like. The winner is going to be Linda Ramsdell Muti from California. I don't know where in California. And Linda, we're thinking about all you folks out there having the fires. And I know that some of the fires in Colorado got some snow, which has helped, but we're thinking about everybody in California. You're in our thoughts. But congratulations on winning the easel brush clip. Clips right onto your easel to make it easy for you, so that you can keep your brushes kind of at eye level where you can grab them. They're not falling on the ground. And let's see, what else do we have here today? Oh, we're today in the comments, for the comments, we're giving away my book, Make More Money Selling Your Art. I happen to have a copy right here. I keep a copy on my desk at all times because I have to remind myself of things that I wrote. So that, anyway, we're going to give away a copy of that. And the way you win that is by making comments. And you can tell us where you're from if you're outside the U.S. or where you're from inside. Just make any comment, and then we'll grab from the comments. All right. I think that's pretty much everything I've got for today. So now we're going to get back to our very special guest, Marc Dalessio, who is coming to us live from Portugal. Hi, Marc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is pretty exciting having you on. And it's, what is it, about 8 o'clock there, 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
No, it's 6.
6. Okay. Well, all right. So you're a full 6 hours ahead of us. All right, so still daylight.
Yeah, daylight. And normally I would still be outside, but it's been very hot here since we got back. And so
you pretty much paint outside every day?
Much of the year. I mean, I do a lot of studio stuff because I have a lot of requests from galleries for subject matter in places where I don't live. Can't spend 2 months. We actually just spent 2 months in France building up bodies of work for an exhibition next year, and it's a 12-hour drive, but we were able to get up there and work on site, which I think is the best way. Personally, for me, landscape painting, I'm the fastest, and I am I feel a lot of my best work is done outside. It just comes easier, and a lot of time things too. I mean, I have done some of my favorite work entirely in the studio, but it often would take me maybe a month or two, whereas outdoors, I mean, up there, the little painting of the hay bales, I think that was painted on site in the Gers region of France last summer. And I think it maybe took 4 or 5 days. It was while I was actually teaching a painting workshop. And
so, Marc, when you get a commissioned work, if somebody wants, let's say they want a painting of an area that you do not have a study on or you haven't visited, will you go to that place to do it, or will you do it from a photograph? And I'm curious how you feel about photographs.
I mean, to me, I'm not anti-photograph in any way. I think some of my favorite painters have used photography. And I personally, I'll talk a bit later about working in the studio and enlarging these paintings, and I use, photograph as a tool. So I'm not anti-photography, but I find it would be absolutely impossible for me to paint a painting entirely from a photograph. I need to be there. I need to feel, the environment there. I need these sketches. I mean, you can see over here, there's, that's my little sketch rack.
Wow.
And so these are all, small outdoor studies and actually there's a bunch more over there. These are sort of the ones that are still drying in a CD rack. And so I really need, I need to see how I would see the values. I need to see how I would see the colors. I don't trust photography. I think that it changes. I don't trust it for painting. It's a beautiful art in itself, but I don't find that if I look at a photograph I took and I look at a little painting I did, I find that everything is so completely different that there's no way I could ever I mean, I've done portraits of people who passed away, for example.
But it's hard. I got to the point where I try to only paint studio paintings from studies that I've done. And once in a while, I'll be in a situation where I'll see something, I don't have my paints, I don't have time. I'll snap a photograph, and I'll try to bring it into the studio and do it. And it just feels difficult for me, even though I try to implement what I've learned outdoors. I don't know, it lacks soul or something, and I almost always end up abandoning what I've done by photograph because I have a hard time with it. How do you get over that? Is there a way?
I've never done. I can't just work entirely from the photograph. I tried. There was a period many years ago when I thought I knew there were painters who had done really nice work from photos. So I thought, well, I'll give that a shot as well. But it's funny because I still have some of them, and they're really impressionistic. And people often will tell me even like paintings look kind of photographic and ask me if I'm using photos, but they look photographic when I work from life. Or, tighter. When I work from photos, they end up being very impressionistic. I find that with the photos, there's so little information, whereas, and the camera has made all these decisions about how much information we're getting. Whereas when you work from life, you have way too much information that you kind of whittle down to what's essential. And that, to me, there's so much joy in that process of being overwhelmed with sensations, and then bringing that down to what's important. Whereas with a photo, for me anyways, just working entirely from a photo is...
well, some people, when they do it, if they take a smaller study and then they want to blow it up and turn it into a larger painting, some painters will paint with more detail in the larger one than they will from the study. Some will try to preserve that energy that they caught in the plein air study. What do you do?
To me, I try to get more information in a larger piece than a study. Most of my studies are 2 hours, and like I say, some of these big studio paintings will take me, the first one I did took me 6 months almost every day. And now, even today, they take 3 weeks or a month. And the same size painting, like I said, would take 4 or 5 days outside, and I would end up with the same amount of information. And I thought about this a lot. I think when you do it entirely from the studio, you're inventing so much, and a lot of it, because I don't have that experience of invention, because I was trained as a visual, with in Florence, painting visually, I never really got that. I wasn't able to invent as well. And that's something that I've had to teach myself working in the studio, and there's still a lot of trial and error involved in it. But I think that invention is in inventing the detail. And I think that what I realized early on, this was looking at the work of Zorn, and there's a few examples where he used photographs, and actually Rocco is another good example, illustrator. And they used photography, and when you look at the final result and the photograph, you realize that what they're doing is they were taking the photo really as a reference and imagining the form in their head, and then recreating the form on the canvas from a sort of a three-dimensional image that they had in their mind. And I think that my problem was coming from an age where we're bombarded with flat images all the time. You just see, we're so much more used to a flat image than perhaps they were. That if I see a photograph, I want to copy it sort of, as if I was sight-setting or something. Copy the flat shapes onto another flat shape. Whereas I think the trick to using photographs, well, and it's not something that I've been able to do entirely, I still need my sketches, is to reimagine everything and then paint from your reimagining, and really just use the photos as a reference. And that is what the original referred to.
I once visited Virgil Elliott's studio in California, and he had been hired to do a posthumous portrait of someone who had passed away, and he had 30 or 40 photographs of that person, and he sculpted a bust from the photographs. And I said, why do you need to do that? Why not just paint from the photographs? He says, because I need to see the form. And so he sculpted a bust of this person so he could paint the portrait. I thought that was pretty creative.
Yeah, I mean, that's a solution, an elaborate solution to the same problem that I always have with trying to work in photographs. And I think too, it's often when you read historic artists writing about art, they talk a lot about visual memory. And there's a wonderful book by a woman named Frances Yates on the art of memory, where she talks about historically how people might see a book once in their lifetime, and they had developed all these memory tools. And a lot of them involved creating spaces in your mind where you would put information. And then when you needed to remember the information, you would walk through these, often cathedrals, mental cathedrals, and find the information that you had left there before and you remember. And I think that there was just, we're so saturated with images that we don't use that aspect of our minds as much as it used to be, as much as it was common before, to create sort of visual places in our brains. And it's not something that I had a lot of experience with when I first came around. But then I realized that if you want to be a studio landscape painter, it is actually something very important to be able to visualize faces and elements and atmosphere in your mind. And so,
well, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over and do what you were kind of planning for us, and show us your thoughts on upsizing and whatever else you want to show us. We're eager to see it.
Okay.
So, keep one thing in mind that, and I know it's going to be tough for you, but if you're turning your head away from the microphone, talk a little louder if you can, because it's harder to pick it up.
Okay.
All right. Terrific.
I'll keep that in mind. So I wanted to talk about the various, like I said, the three sort of, I paint a lot of large outdoor paintings. The final subject is an outdoor subject. And I've done it in either entirely outdoors or entirely indoors. And then lately, occasionally, I just since I'm coming out of these quarantines, I did earlier this year do a large painting where I started outside, brought it in the studio and finished it in the studio. And so I thought that would also be interesting to talk about, because we were in France and I decided to try that as more strategy. I needed to do some larger paintings. And
Mark, we're getting a few comments that the audio is a little tough. Is there a way you can get closer to the mic? Maybe change the camera around so you can get a little closer? Or
okay, I'll stand closer, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I was saying that I want to try to work on. I just want to discuss the three ways I've done these paintings. So the first are the two that you see here. The one up on the wall, like I say, it was done in about 4 or 5 days, entirely outside. I feel I got a lot of information down. I was, the nice thing about working entirely outside on a subject like that is as the shadows creep along, and crawl up over the haystack, you can sort of pick exactly the moment you want. And so you use the changing light to your advantage. And it was in the summer, so it was almost always the same light. But often I go out on these longer paintings and you'll get a day where the light is, just say it's overcast and that's your subject. What I found works really well is, rather than lose the day, I'll work on all the drawing. I'll use the colors I already have, the values I already have, and then I'll just keep working on the drawing. And we call it painting into the effect when the effect is not what you have, but it's going to be that way later. Then you work on the drawings using the colors that you had before, and or that are going to be there. So,
so when you say 5 days, are those 5 full days, or do you go out for a couple hours at a time? How does that work?
No, it was probably 2 or 3 hours each day.
Right, because you want to keep the approximate light that you had before.
Yeah, and it depends. There's, if you're painting something at dawn, you got half an hour, 40 minutes before the light, but the effect is completely different. if you're painting, there was a back video I loved painting in Italy that I would paint a number of times over the years. And it was a very beautiful little town on a hill, and you were painting the north side of the town. So it stayed in shadow all day. And you could arrive in the morning when the sun was here at about 10, and then paint until 3. And even though the sun was here, most of your light effect hadn't changed that much, just a little bits of light hitting the side of the building. So you got, you could have a very long session. But generally, if you're painting a morning scene or an afternoon scene, you'll get 2, 3, maybe 4 hours of pretty consistent light where you can, and like I say, if I kept painting and the shadows moved a lot more, I could just work on all the information in the shadows.
Right. So, yeah, the temptation is to chase it though, and that's a tough discipline to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you're chasing it because it's getting better, that's something that's totally valid too. That's the advantage of taking the life. If it keeps getting better, then you keep chasing it. If you realize, okay, it was actually nicer before, then you stop. And then on these larger paintings, you generally have to come back the next day. This painting of my wife was done on our terrace here out back, and this was actually over a month, almost every day. So I think it was 60 or more hours of. She wasn't standing there the whole time. A lot of it was the detail and everything. But again, in the mornings, and it's nice because sometimes you can say, okay, well, the light looks better in this area at 10 o'clock in the morning, but the light looks better in the background at 1 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, in the afternoon. So if you're working in a long stretch of time, you can also have various different light effects happening in, throughout the painting. So one area will be, one time, another area will be at another time, and as long as it's not too extreme, nobody's going to really notice. So
when you go from one day of painting to another day of painting, do you lay down any retouch varnish or any linseed oil or anything like that?
I'll often oil out, which is I use this wonderful medium that you can find the recipe on my website. It's possibly similar to the medium that Anthony Van Dyck used in the Baroque period. And it's a balsam and a sun-thickened linseed oil. We thicken the oil ourselves here.
And that's one that you sell on your website?
No, I just give you the recipe.
You make it yourself. Okay. All right.
The recipe came from Charles Cecil, who I studied with. He got it from a doctor who was painted by Rubens, and he sort of dabbled in painting, and Van Dyck gave him a bunch of recipes, and he wrote them down. So his name was de Maer, Flemish doctor, 17th century. And so we have all these recipes because of him. And so this is sort of a modern variant on it. And for oiling out, it's absolutely wonderful to paint back into because you get a really nice fusion with the colors. It's very easy to keep soft edges. So continuing though on this idea, let me put another painting out.
Okay. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments section. We'd love to get your questions. I'll read them to Marc as they come in. And thank you guys for being here today. This is quite a treat to have Marc. I know we've had some issues with sound. He's getting a little closer to the mic, so that'll be helpful, I think. And Marc, if you tuned in late, is in Portugal. So this is nice. Oh, wow. This is going to be nice. I want to learn all about this. Hello, there's somebody just tuned in from Israel. Thank you for tuning in.
Sorry. So this is another painting done entirely from life. Actually, it was done this morning. It's not finished yet. This is day 2, just to sort of give you an idea, a bit about my working process for these larger plein air landscapes. So we have a van that can fit these big paintings because our old car wouldn't fit them. And now I can take these large paintings out. The wind is sometimes a bit of an issue. I often buy water bottles and fill my backpack and tie or just tie the 6-pack of water on the bottom of the easel. I have a very strong tripod. But I still think that these little studies, even if it's a painting that I can do out entirely outside, I'll often go out for any larger painting and do a study just so I know what I'm getting myself into. You know, I know how the light's going to change. I can see what, over the course of a few hours, what's going to happen. I can see, you know, the really beautiful areas. I get to mix the colors all once already, so that when I go out the second time with the larger painting, I've already have in my, you know, the memory of mixing a lot of those colors, which I find very easy. So, I mean, this was spring, so it's the very, very bright greens. I don't think the trees have entirely come in yet, but this was sort of the kind of cloud effect I wanted. Now, today I was out there, for example, and it's totally different. It's September now. The trees are you know, getting ready to lose their leaves, a lot of them, and very, very dark, sort of gray greens. The clouds were completely different, but I still started to put in, at one point they sort of moved that way, and so I tried to capture that. I also do lots of little drawings. This is one of my sketchbooks, so like here's some...
Can you get that real close? It's hard to see it. Oh, so there we can see it.
I just try to figure out my compositions, and I'll do a few of them. Just again, to try to, if going out with a painting like this, you want to have, you know, really clear sort of battle plan going into it. And then one trick that I learned in Florence that I find incredibly useful is at the beginning stages of the painting, we were taught to always scrape the paint down at the end of the session. And sometimes I would scrape down the beginning of the next session just to give it time to sink into the canvas. This only works on canvas. It doesn't work on panels, but I find it to be an absolutely invaluable tool in oil painting in general, but for these large multi-day paintings, because like, for example, those clouds that I put in today, something might happen at a later date and I'm gonna think, oh, I really wanna change those. But I've put them in with sort of heavy paint and impastos, and if I leave those impastos, I'm gonna get these pentimentos later if I, you know, try to change stuff. So what I do is I get a palette knife with these rounded edges, and it has to be pretty smooth. And one moment, paper towel.
Costa Rica tuning in. Hey, Costa Rica, welcome. And I just saw somebody, Sofia, Bulgaria, welcome. We're glad you're here. Brooklyn, New York, that's kind of like a foreign country. Just kidding. All right. So, okay. Mark, you said you can scrape down off of a canvas, but you can't do it on a panel. Is that just because it's going to scrape all the way in? You're going to leave a mark?
It'll take everything off. So I'll try to pull this forward. So you can see.
Yeah, that's good. Now we don't have any glare.
So, yeah, so basically you take your palette knife and you want to try to keep the paint. This has been sitting in the hot car. So you want to take off any excess paint, but you don't want to take off everything. And you'll get these little bumps in, if you can see that come through in the canvas. And then you can kind of soften it, either with a finger or with a dry brush. And you get this wonderful sort of sense of atmosphere that later on you can glaze over, you can paint back into it. But it just gives you another a technique that will show through in the final painting that you can't get any other way. So, and you'll see this in historic paintings that artists were doing this, using something anyone's come up with recently. There's a Van Dyck painting in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford where you can see some of this. But again, so up here, you know, just taking off all the excess paint. You can see that.
I assume you're using oil.
Yeah, this is all oil. I use titanium white outside because it covers so well. But
How do you avoid the chalkiness that occurs?
I use very strong. All my other colors are really, really good quality, and I find that I don't really have a problem with the chalkiness. I find that if you use good quality paints, there are a number of different brands out there where they're very intense and very good tinting strength. I find that you can combat the titanium pretty well.
It's okay to mention a brand if you want to.
I use two brands, three actually. Williamsburg, I think, make the best cadmiums. I used to make my own paints for, 15 years. I ground my own paints, and then I tried Williamsburg, and they were as good as my hand ground stuff, so I switched. And then the other one, the blues, I really love Old Holland's blues. They're crazy expensive, so I'll show you my palette. So here's my palette, and you can see it's almost all primary colors. So I have 3 yellows, an orange, or secondary color, 2 reds, and 3 blues. And so the blues are all Old Holland, and the cadmiums are all Williamsburg. And I find with these very strong colors, actually I say that I do have some paints by Zecchi, Italian art supplier, and they're quite good. And like the Old Holland Cerulean is very expensive, so I'll use the Zecchi for mixes, and then if I need like a really bright blue in the sky or a really bright green just in certain places, then I'll reach for the Old Holland. But for one of my favorite greens is a lot of these sort of a mature tree at distance. I mix just cerulean and the yellow ochre, and you get like almost a perfect color right away of a cypress tree or an oak tree at a certain distance. And then you can tweak it a bit. But I find that the Zecchi cerulean works just as well as the Old Holland. So
I see, yeah. I went to the Old Holland factory one time. That was fun.
Yeah, they're great paints. They're especially, like I said, blues are just wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
I know. So, anyways, but yeah, Williamsburg is great as well. And so that's one way of working on these extended projects, is to scrape down, keep control of your surface early on, so that at a later date, if you want to change something, you're not going to end up with pentimentos. You can also get these wonderful atmospheric effects in the shadow. This is the little town we live in, and one of the reasons why we fell in love with the place is the whole town faces north, and so you have all these wonderful big windows all facing north, so perfect for artists. And but so this is all a north-facing view, and so it's going to be a lot of shadow. So scraping down, softening these edges is going to allow me to keep this sort of atmospheric sense in the shadows. So
now, when you finish the painting, will you get a lot of impasto on that, or do you try to keep it a pretty consistent brush?
Or if I see something that's really spectacular, at a certain, like now I'm going to keep the shadows thin because I'm not 100% sure if that's what I want. But when they're finished, I might keep the clouds kind of thin. But I've already gone in, like these aren't going to change. So I've gone in and hit impastos on the lights, the little accents of light. Like I said, it's north facing, so we just get a few accents where things jut out. And those I'll hit with impastos. I like to see a variety in the paint surface. So lots of thin shadows and thick highlights. And then hopefully glaze, some of these white. But getting glazes on the impastos is absolutely wonderful. If you said you were going to Russia, you look at that Levitan painting of the birch trees. Stand at a distance and it's all these optical grays. And then you get up close and it's these glazes with really bright purples and oranges and yellows and blues. And he was clearly having a lot of fun with these crazy bright colors that you wouldn't expect in a black and white tree. But then when you stand at a distance, it's gray, and you get up close, and it's these amazing colors all laid on in glazes. He was a master of glazing, and it's something that nobody ever talks about.
Yeah.
I think Serov in the next room is also, he did that painting of his wife in the shade, and you get up close, it's terrible cracking, unfortunately, but that's all done in glazes. So, like I said, I would like to keep this thin to glaze in the shadows, but also paint the impastos quite thick to also glaze there. So give me a second while I change things.
All right, terrific. Mark mentioned we're going to Russia. We have found there was a retreat owned by a wealthy collector who owned 30, 40 acres in a really beautiful area of Russia, about an hour outside of Moscow. And Levitan and Shishkin and Repin and Serov and all those people hung out there all summer and all fall, and many of their famous paintings were done there. So we're actually going to go to a place like that. We're actually going to that place. Oh, look at that. That is stunning. Wow. Mesmerizing. And when you're talking about this one too, Mark, if you'll talk a little bit about composition, because that composition is spectacular.
Sure. So these are where we live in Alentejo. They have a lot of cork forests.
Cork?
So cork, wine corks.
Yeah.
So these are cork. It's a species of live oak, and basically what happens is cork is the bark, and they take the bark off up to a certain point. So that's why they have these kind of funny little bumps, and then above it is where they haven't stripped the cork. So.
Keeps the tree alive.
They also grow these yellow lupin in the spring in the Cork forests. I think it's animal feed. So around here we had a lot of these very beautiful fields of the yellow lupin, and then the cork oaks. But I wanted to talk about this painting because it was done this year, March, I guess it was, and then the quarantine started, and so I had to stop at a certain point and then come back into the studio and try to finish it. And in a case like this, I didn't want to. I mean, I had all the colors I needed, all the values I needed from working outside. But what I needed was a lot of the. I mean, I didn't have time to paint all the flowers outside, for example. So that was something that I needed to do in the studio. And then just a lot of fixing up of shapes. And in this kind of case, it was interesting to transition from an outdoor painting to a studio painting because I needed to, but I had so much of the color, so it was a bit like going from a sketch to a studio painting, except that it was already on the painting. And then what I did was I used photos of lupin in maybe not in the same spot where I was, but in in another section of the forest. Because where I was, it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. So, but what I wanted to say is that I actually, when I was setting up this studio, and actually my last studio too, I invested in a big monitor, a computer monitor, that has very high resolution, 42 inches. And my idea was that I would put it next to the painting and then use that as my reference. But what I realized is that I was constantly distracted by the incorrect colors and the incorrect values that I was getting off the monitor. And what I discovered is much more useful is a laser printer. So I actually tried it with another TV later, and both of them ended up not working for, I didn't feel they worked at all for painting, because I see lots of artists trying to figure out screens, and I think the best way, for me anyways, the best way to work from a photograph is to have a black and white laser print with, decent values, but no color information whatsoever.
All right, so it's not throwing your eye off. Now, you started that painting in plein air, yes?
Yeah.
So you painted that size outdoors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as far as composition goes, I walk a lot. When I paint outside, I tend to, because I sight size, I know there's artists who can, and very good artists who can say, oh, well, I don't like that tree, I like the tree over there. So, and they just kind of move stuff around. What I tend to do is I walk a lot more, and the last sort of, when I find a view I want, I'll go back and forth, 5 feet or yards or meters, very small distances, just to get exactly the angle where everything fits. I mean, I'm not opposed to making changes if I need to, but I'm much happier to find a view where everything is just perfect and view. And so here I think it's a pretty simple composition to take the largest element, put it slightly off center, and then try to counterbalance it with a lot of empty space. And here there's a lot of repetition in the trees, but here everything's doing something kind of different. I had a lot of questions in my own head about how to handle lupin, if I wanted large patches or sort of uniform. And I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but like, my God, I painted these lupins so many times to get exactly what I wanted, which ended up being kind of dispersed and slightly, some patterns, but just trying to avoid repetition, which is very.
But I noticed that some of the darker spots tend to lead the eye. Well, I assume that was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, certainly looking for larger accents and then smaller accents as the eye recedes. And then, it's kind of fun to get the distance, just hitting it with pure cadmium too. Like, normally you'd have a lot of atmospheric perspective in there, but it was, the light is often so crisp here that it's just.
Marc, is there the way your leaves on the big tree are meeting the sky is just delightful. And I think it's not super high contrast. Can you talk about meeting the leaves with the sky? How do you get that to look right?
Well, I tend to paint a lot going back and forth. So I'll paint with the leaves, I'll paint. I was taught to keep with the sky first, so I'll bring the sky down, leave a gap, then paint up with the leaves, then push down with the sky, and push back with the leaves, and back down with the sky, back and forth. And it's never one thing. And then, like I said, I like, there's areas over here where I've scraped down, and you can still see that it's very sort of transparent. And then if you go in over that with a real opaque, what I love about the titanium white, I used lead white for years outside, and I really fought the transparency. I think lead white is absolutely essential for figure painting. But outdoors, there's great painters who use lead white. I really love the covering power of titanium, so I switched. And I'm trying to keep a variety of edge. So I want to have really, really soft edges, and then some razor sharp ones, and then just a ton of accents. And our brain is sort of hardwired to look for patterns. When we're painting the edges of trees, and I do this too, you'll often look for patterns, and you'll paint, repetition without even realizing, especially if you switch to autopilot for a second, which is easy to do when you're painting the tree. And what I'll do is, if I suddenly realize that I've been thinking about the grocery that I picked up or something, I'll realize that I then have to go back and really look for any repetition and get rid of it. Because repetition is kind of the killer in landscape painting. You just want to keep a variety of edge, variety of shape. And the best way to do that at the beginning is really just to slowly and methodically copy what you see, because nature is the best inventor. And if you do that slow and methodically at the beginning, then you'll be able to do it faster and faster and faster. But if you try to be fast at the beginning without the accuracy, you never get the accuracy later. Try to be accurate at the beginning without the speed, you will get the speed later. So
So, Mark, we've got just 2 or 3 minutes left. You have something specific you want to talk about before we wrap, or questions?
No, I can take questions if you want.
All right. Hello from India. Hello from Brazil. Hello from New Zealand. Man, they're tuning in from everywhere. Somebody asked if you would explain site size. You mentioned it. Some people don't know what that means.
Sure. Basically, it's kind of hard to do here, but if your panel was this big, and so your panel's here, and you imagine a square that big, and you make sure that everything that you're looking through this, as if it's flat, and you copy that 1-to-1 to your painting. I have a video.
In other words, the trunk of that tree, or that tree, would be exactly the size it appears
in this space. Like the girl sells these little frames you can put next to your panel. I do it just with my head, but I often use a brush too. I have a video on YouTube that explains it all if they want to check that out. It's 1 minute long. So
somebody in the comments said that you need to do a video with us. We'll talk. Now you're going to be on Realism Live and you're going to be doing a demo, right?
Yeah.
You can't show it. You can't show it because it's a secret, but you've already shot it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's here.
Okay. So you can tell us what you're going to do. You just can't show it yet.
I've already shot it. I mean, I'm waiting for approval because otherwise I'll find something else. We were in France, and we were trying to, like I said, we have this exhibition coming up with a specific castle. So we were looking for views of this castle, and we wanted to get certain views from across the riverbank. We couldn't get so we rented a canoe, and we went down the Dordogne with the canoe and looked for views along the river, and then painting on the riverbank.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much. I have to jump off because we're out of time, but this has been a pleasure. Everybody, thumbs up and applause for Marc Dalessio. Mark, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Sure. Thank you. And
all right. And that was Marc Dalessio coming to us from Portugal. He will be one of the faculty members in doing a demo on Realism Live. You want to get your seat for Realism Live before the end of the month. You can save $200 more. So that's at realismlive.com, a virtual conference from people all over the world. We've already got about 1,200 people attending, maybe more. I haven't checked for about a week. Thank you guys for being here today. And I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. And we will see you tomorrow on day number 171. Take care.